Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from the NFL to the NBA, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And I hope you all had a great Super Bowl weekend. Anyone who knows me, especially being a Patriots fan, knows that this weekend, including yesterday, was a bit of a blur for me. I was pretty pissed off during the game, to be honest with you. Seeing that Patriots offense, what it looked like it had me, my neighbors, and my local high school football team out there running that operation. I mean, it was just embarrassing as hell. And I give a lot of credit to that Seahawks defense, man. I mean, they went out there, they played their ass off. I mean, Mike McDonald, the way they drafted that team, the way it schemed, they were fantastic. So a big congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks for winning the Super Bowl this year, getting their second in franchise history. And it was a great year for you guys. But before we dive in to my Super Bowl 60 reaction, I just wanted to give you guys a massive thank you for sticking around with me here throughout the podcast for my first full NFL season here on the pod. It was a great year, y'all. We had content constantly pumping out, no matter how busy I was, whatever it was. You guys really came through. We've seen a lot of progress here on the channel. We're almost up to 500 subs. My social medias are looking good. You guys are always leaving comments, likes, leaving your opinions, whatever it is. I just can't thank you guys enough. Again, this is my dream. It's always bittersweet when the Super Bowl rolls around, and especially when it ends, because we know it's the last game of the year. We always all enjoy it. It's one of my favorite events, a lot of people's favorite events of the year. And after it's done, we got to go through a whole winter, the rest of winter, the whole spring, whole summer. Just no football. But if you're wondering what the podcast is going to look like now, especially after the NFL season, of course, we're going to be doing a lot on the NFL draft. We got mock drafts, analysis. I'm probably going to live stream the draft when that rolls around as well. Have live reactions to whoever gets picked to wherever. So we have a lot coming up on the draft, and it's always mainly going to be a football channel, of course. So we still have a ton of football content throughout the year, every year. So, yeah, no shortage of that. And then, of course, with the NBA playoffs right around the corner, we got a lot to talk about there, too, as well. So, and I think the NBA playoffs this year is going to be loaded. We got Harden on the Cavs now. The East, I think, is starting to open up a little more. The West, OKC doesn't quite look like juggernauts. They're kind of dealing with some health issues. So we'll see where it goes. I think we're going to have a pretty interesting NBA champion this year. Interesting finals. So I think we'll see it there. So make sure to stay tuned. We got content for days here on the channel. So yeah, man, let's dive into my Super Bowl 60 reaction here. Patriots end up falling to the Seahawks 29-13 on Sunday. The Seahawks, that was a dominant defensive performance from the Seattle Seahawks. And when I go through and I look through past Seahawks teams, and one of the things I've always said with the Seahawks is they're one of the more stable franchises in the NFL. I think they're one of the more underrated franchises in sports. I mean, they're fantastic. I can't go back and look at a time, at least in recent history. I mean, every team has a bit of a downfall. New England's had it the last 4 or 5 years or so. They've been less than mediocre. I mean, they've been pretty terrible. They've been one of the worst teams in the league. And Seattle, the way they rebuild teams, they are clearly a defensive, heavy, focused franchise. And you go back to the Legion of Boom about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago or so, how dominant they were with Wagner, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas. I mean, guys, everywhere you look, just so dominant on that defensive side of the ball. And this is very reminiscent of that Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks team. You have guys, Eamon Warry, they drafted, Weatherspoon, what's his name, Reek Woolen. You can sign guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Byron Murphy. I mean, this team is so stacked on every level of defense. And you had Pete Carroll coaching that defense there for years and just coaching the whole team, of course. But their formula is get a good defensive head coach and then get a really good offensive coordinator. And of course, Kubiak is now the head coach of the Raiders. I'm very curious to see how that goes. I'm going to give my opinion more on that more in the upcoming days here. But their formula clearly is a franchise, and they stick by it because they have had a lot of consistent success This is now their second Super Bowl in their franchise's history. They've had a good bit of appearances to the Super Bowl. I mean, you argue even back in 2014, if it's not for that Malcolm Butler interception, they at least have 3 rings. And then the referees had to come out and publicly apologize in that Seahawks and Steelers Super Bowl back in, what, '05 or something, like a long, long time ago. I think it may have been like '06, '07 or something like that. That was a long, long time ago. Yeah, I mean, you look, they could arguably have like 4 rings as a franchise, but they are very consistent in the way they do things. As I mentioned before, they love sticking to defensive head coaches. They clearly love their formula. Get a good OC, stick to defense, hit defensive players in the draft. And you even look, when they departed from Russell Wilson a few years ago, that could have been a time they were like, okay, we are going to blow this entire thing up. And they're still going 10-7. They made the playoffs a few years ago. They actually missed the playoffs last year, but they still finished like 10-7. They were still a good team. But I have a lot of respect for Mike Macdonald. And what he did is he didn't just sit there and be like, okay, well, we're this close to being a playoff team. We don't want to make too many changes. You know, we see Geno as a competent quarterback. Apparently they did try to retain him in the offseason. It didn't work. He wanted more than what they were willing to give him, which I respect. So they took a risk of getting Sam Darnold. They went and got Cooper Kupp, which, mind you, the Rams were telling Cooper Kupp to retire from football. They got him. They moved off of DK Metcalf, who was seen as kind of their franchise wide receiver for years before that. And they said, you know what, we're going to let JSN take the reins. I mean, look at them. They were the best team in football this year by a mile. They completely dominated the Patriots. And meanwhile, they didn't necessarily have the best offensive game in the Super Bowl. JSN ended up getting hurt. I seen he went into the medical tent and then actually had to go back into the locker room in the second half. So when I was seeing that, I was like, New England may actually end up coming back, but Seattle, man, that defense is just something. And I think there's 2 teams watching the Seattle Super Bowl that are just kicking themselves really hard. One is the Minnesota Vikings for letting Sam Darnold walk, who can clearly be a competent enough quarterback to win the Super Bowl. The Vikings are very reminiscent to me of the Seattle Seahawks. Like, they have an amazing defense with Brian Flores coaching, and O'Connell is just a great offensive mind. I know they fired their GM, but the J.J. McCarthy pick has kind of ruined that franchise. Not kind of, it has ruined that franchise. Justin Jefferson, they're not going to trade Justin Jefferson, but he's clearly unhappy in Minnesota, and he's taken some shots at J.J. McCarthy so far in the offseason. I don't know if you guys have seen some of his interviews, but he has taken some shots at J.J. McCarthy. So clearly he is unhappy there, and they do not know what they're going to do at quarterback. Do they want to stick by J.J. McCarthy? Because he kind of upped his play a little bit towards the end of the season this year, but he still didn't play great. And I think the main thing that is more concerning than McCarthy's play is his injury history. He has not proven to that Minnesota Vikings organization he can stay healthy, because there's multiple times this season, and of course all of last season, before in training camp, he tore his ACL and just tore his leg to shreds. He didn't play a single snap. He played a couple snaps in the first game of the preseason, and that was it. So we had no clue what J.J. McCarthy was going to look like this year. And them letting Sam Darnold walk, clearly, O'Connell, Jefferson watching that, those guys are kicking themselves in the ass right now. Like, what the hell did we do? Because I think the Vikings are on the verge of a potential, kind of a Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl. They're right there. I mean, I look at the way the roster is constructed: Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, good running backs. I think their O-line could be improved a little bit, but the Seahawks don't necessarily have a brick wall of an O-line. When I think of a great O-line, I think of the Lions last year, and they didn't even end up winning the Super Bowl. I think the Seahawks have a pretty average offensive line. I mean, Sam Darnold was under some big duress in that Super Bowl as well. I think the Vikings have an average offensive line on their best day, maybe a little bit above average offensive line. I think there could be some work there to be done, but they have a great defense coached under Flores. Maybe not quite as good as Seattle's, but they have a team where they could legitimately make a Super Bowl run, and they're really kicking themselves for letting Sam Darnold go. he didn't dominate in the playoffs. He wasn't someone you look, he's done 4 touchdowns against the 49ers, 4 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown against the Rams. He had a really good game against Los Angeles, but actually in the Super Bowl, I actually didn't think he played a very good game in the Super Bowl. That throw earlier on in the game to JSN, he had him for a touchdown. He just completely missed him. Now, I understand he was under some duress, and I thought where he deserves a lot of credit was his pocket awareness in that game, and his ability to escape sacks in that game was like 1 to none. Like, I have not seen quite a performance like that in the pocket in a long time. It wasn't necessarily great throwing the ball, miss some open guys, but he was huge in terms of setting guys up like Kenneth Walker to break off a big run and not necessarily killing drives, because sacks are drive killers. In terms of pressures, New England was right up there with Seattle in terms of pressuring the quarterback. They just couldn't sack Sam Darnold at all. You look at the performance Drake Maye had. Drake Maye was just getting beat to death, but Drake Maye couldn't escape sacks. And I'll get into Drake Maye here in a few. I thought Drake Maye played a poor game. I did. I thought the numbers. I look at the end of the game. What was he? I have the stat sheet put up here. 27 for 43, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. He took 6 sacks. He did not seem like he threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those kind of came in garbage time. They were playing prevent defense. He did not have a good game in the Super Bowl. And seeing Mike Macdonald and what he did with that defense, and speaking of the other team that's really kicking themselves in the Baltimore Ravens for letting Mike Macdonald go, Jesse Minter, his future is completely, he could go on to win maybe 4 Super Bowls or something with Ray. Who knows? I may be saying this, we look 5 years from now, like, God, Matt, like, how could you say they could keep Mike Macdonald over hiring Jesse Minter? You never know. But as of this moment, letting Mike Macdonald walk and go to Seattle after already pretty disappointing tenure there his last few years, John Harbaugh, they could have let John Harbaugh walk and hired Mike Macdonald. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson would have a ring on his finger if they did that. Because the only thing that stopped Baltimore from being, especially this year, from being in the playoffs, and I think Baltimore could have made a run and went to the Super Bowl this year, by the way, if they got in. If Tyler Luke does not make that kick, I think Baltimore has a legitimate shot of getting to the Super Bowl. If their defense was even average, that Zach Orr-coach defense was atrocious. The way they were schemed was absolutely the worst in the NFL. You have guys like Mike Green playing back at pass coverage, yet he's just a bull rushing, speed rushing, edge rushing kind of guy. He's playing back in coverage for most of his snaps. If they had Mike Macdonald coaching that team and they hire a solid offensive coordinator, the Ravens have a ring on their finger. I'd bet the farm on it. Lamar Jackson would have a ring on his finger. There's no doubt about it. And they know that. And look, Jesse Minter, like I mentioned, may end up a 2-3-time Super Bowl champion head coach, and Lamar ends his career with 2-3 rings. I don't know. We'll see. I think he can be a great head coach. A lot of great vibes in the Ravens organization right now. But DaCosta and those guys are like, damn, we're looking at this guy hoisting the Lombardi, and we're out here trying to make hypotheticals saying maybe Minter can be that guy. But I know for a fact that if Macdonald was head coach of that team have a ring on their finger. And I think Lamar and them know that as well. So that's another team kicking themselves. But, this was a really impressive run by the Seahawks in general. I actually predicted, not just because I'm a Patriots fan, that the Seahawks would win this game. Or the Patriots would win this game, excuse me. Because I said the defenses the Seahawks had played, starting off with the 49ers in the NFC divisional round, they were beat to hell. It was a matter of time that the Seahawks, the injuries would catch up to them, and they caught up to them in that Seattle game. They didn't stand a chance from the jump. Rashid Shaheed took off a kickoff return touchdown the second the game started. They didn't stand a chance. Kittle went down the week before that. They just stood no chance in that defense. Rolling guys out there like Eric Kendricks, and their defense just didn't have a pass rush. It was only a matter of time, right? So seeing the 49ers defense, I was like, okay, Seattle didn't play a great defense in that game. The Rams defense was not great either. They had a lot of holes in the secondary, the cornerback position. They have a great young, fast, electric pass rush, but their secondary was toast. They were getting burnt all season. And especially towards the second half of the season, that Rams secondary was even worse than they were to start off the season, which they're obviously going to be looking a lot to make a lot of changes there. And that's where I was like, okay, Darnold, who is nursing this oblique injury or whatever injury I had to his leg, I believe it was an oblique injury. I was like, him going against this Patriots pass rush, who has been fantastic in the Super Bowl. Milton Williams a year ago had a historic performance in the Super Bowl. I think he had the greatest performance for a defensive lineman in NFL history in the Super Bowl last year. I was like, I think he's going to repeat that performance. He did end up having a sack. And like I said before, New England had a shit ton of pressures in that game, right? And I was like, I think Darnold, clearly this oblique injury, I think is going to nag him a little bit. I think he's going to take some hits. I think that defense is, I thought it was going to be kind of a low scoring, kind of just maybe churn out some field goals kind of game, which it actually kind of was for the most part for Seattle. That New England defense played great, especially with their pressures and everything, just couldn't sack Darnold at all. I thought New England was going to beat them just due to their defense. Like, the Seahawks did not see a defense like that for the entirety of the playoffs. And where I thought New England I thought they would struggle on offense, not quite to the extent they did in the Super Bowl, but I thought they'd struggle. But I thought, look, Maye threw for 3 touchdowns on the Texans defense. He didn't necessarily play great against the Chargers defense, but that's still a top unit. The Broncos defense, they won 10-7. They didn't necessarily play great in that game, but he had some clutch throws in that game. I was like, as long as they do not turn the ball over, I was like, was pretty certain New England was going to win that game just due to the fact of the defenses they've seen. And New England's up there with the Broncos, with Houston, that kind of defense. They were on that level for the entirety of the playoffs. So that's where I thought New England would win the game, take advantage of that, but they didn't. Seattle's defense is just a force to be reckoned with, man. And Sam Darnold's career resurrection is pretty crazy. I throw Baker in that mix as well. They're in the same draft class. I know Baker hasn't quite had the success Darnold's had, but seeing those two, how they were on the same team 3 years ago on the Carolina Panthers, trying to resurrect their careers together. I mean, those guys were just kind of thrown in the trash like, hey, who gives a shit about you? We'll just trade you. We'll trade you two for nothing. The Jets moved up. When you have organizations, right, like the Browns and the Jets, Baker the Browns and Darnold the Jets, moving off of you like you're a piece of trash and just kind of throwing you to the Panthers like, hey, we don't really give a shit. And then on top of that, the Panthers move you. The Panthers don't even like you two anymore. Like, they both get moved off of from the Carolina Panthers. That is those moments in those two's lives. And I know I'm kind of talking about Darnold here, but I'll throw Baker in as well because he's resurrected his career in Tampa. And I'm sure this year will be different going into there for him. But Darnold, all the adversity he faced being a backup in San Francisco, then going to be a backup in Minnesota to start the year, it was going to be J.J. McCarthy's team. And McCarthy went down. I was like, oh, shit, well, we got to start Sam Darnold now. He goes out and has a great year for the Minnesota Vikings, then gets picked up by Seattle, wins a Super Bowl in his first year. The mental toughness that takes, I can only imagine. I can only imagine the mental toughness that takes for somebody, because he knew from the Jets, from the Panthers, from, the 49ers, he didn't really know. I guess he didn't necessarily stand a chance there anyway, because Purdy, they clearly liked him, and he's been fantastic for them. He's on a massive contract now. Guys like Garoppolo and stuff at first, Trey Lance, they obviously valued over Sam Darnold. And anything like that in your life where you just feel like anywhere you go, everyone else is valued more than you are, that can't be a good feeling. And seeing where you were what, the number 3 pick in the draft, and you were just, everywhere you went, just it did not work. And you go out, you have a career year for Minnesota. Now you're a Super Bowl champion with Seattle. That's got to be a hell of a feeling, because he just felt like he was thrown to the wayside for, really his entire NFL career until last year. So congrats to him. That is a feel-good story right there. Watching his post-game interview with Seattle, where he was kind of tearing up saying, I'm not really an emotional guy, but man, does this feel just so good. I could only imagine, dude. It really out there living the dream. And just a big congratulations to Sam Darnold, because a lot of people threw you to the side, didn't believe in you, criticized you, was just talking a lot of shit everywhere, all over the media, and you're hearing it on teams, teammates, whatever. To overcome adversity like that and go on to win a Super Bowl and resurrect your career like that, it takes a lot. I'm sure your mental health, I'm sure his mental health was really taking a toll there for a little while, because no matter what you do, you seem like you can't get anything right. So a big congrats there. And one other thing about the Seattle Seahawks is I think they're kind of shaping things in the NFL now. Like, you look at a lot of other teams, like the Miami Dolphins, the Arizona Cardinals, even the Ravens and the Bills to an extent, the Jags with Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, those are good teams, not Arizona, not Miami. But the Ravens, the Jags now, the Bills, they are good teams. They're paying their quarterback a lot of money. They're paying them in the upper $200 million range. And the Seahawks, Sam Darnold is on an incredibly team-friendly deal. And it kind of looks now like other franchises are going to be looking at like, hey, like, I don't want to pay my quarterback $250 million, because look at the state of the team afterwards. We can't afford to go out and make big-time draft picks. Or I know necessarily cap space doesn't necessarily have to do with draft picks all the way, but when you can go out and sign free agents, when you can't go out and sign Cooper Kupp when you're tied to $250+ million is tied to your cap space. You can't go out and do that. You can't go out and try and go and sign DeMarcus Lawrence, guys like that. You can't do that. And now they can go and they can re-sign guys like Witherspoon, and later on in the future, re-sign guys like Eamon Warren, re-sign Reek Woolen. Right? Like, you can go and sign JSN to a big contract later on at some point. Kenneth Walker. You can go and do that because you're not tied down to $250, $300 million at cap space to your team. So I think other teams are really going to look at that and look at their formula for success, that they're not tied down to all of this money in their quarterback. And I think other teams have been looking for an excuse to not pay their quarterback $300 million anymore. And I think when you look at guys like Tua Tagovailoa, you look at guys like Kyler Murray, you look at guys even like Lamar and Josh Allen, who've never even been to a Super Bowl, look at how much money they're making. The Bills roster is in shambles right now, and they can't necessarily get the best draft picks because, one, I just don't think their GM room is nearly as good as Seattle's. I mean, they have an all-time level GM room, management room up there in Seattle. John Schneider and those guys are fantastic. What's interesting is that team's actually up for sale now, so I'm curious to see how that all goes down there in Seattle. Their value is going to go up even more now. They just won a Super Bowl too, which is wild. But like the Ravens, like, they're dealing with older players. They're dealing with issues like, can they even re-sign certain guys, because they're going to have to extend Lamar to even more money. And the Bills roster, their roster is kind of in deep shit. Like, they're kind of going up shit's creek without a paddle, to be honest with you. Like, their receiving room's a mess. Their defense is getting old. Like, that Bills roster is not great. And yeah, Josh Allen plays the Superman role great, but I don't know how he's going to overcome some of this stuff. So I think Seattle's really shaping the way for the future of the NFL for some teams. Now, kind of shifting into the New England Patriots here, I'm just going to talk about them briefly, because one thing with them is, yeah, Drake Maye had a really poor performance, but God, is Will Campbell... He should not have played if he was that injured. I know he says he feels great, this and that. Dude, he was actually playing good football before the injury against Cincinnati a while back. But since he came back from that injury, he's almost been unplayable at the tackle position. And I've been kind of, thinking, doing some research, this and that. People want him to move to guard. But Will Campbell was one of the better left tackles and really developing into being one of the better left tackles before that injury. I just don't think he's all the way healthy. And with that, it's like, I think they would have been better off subbing in Vidarian Lowe than necessarily keeping an injured Will Campbell in there, because he was borderline unplayable throughout the playoffs. That Seattle game, he had the worst performance for a tackle in like Super Bowl history. I think in playoff history. I mean, it was atrocious. It was so bad. I mean, Seattle's rushing 3, rushing 4. They can't handle it. And that's where I'm just like, I don't know. But New England, I will say one thing about this team is, while it was in a really disappointing Super Bowl game, the run they had was incredibly impressive. And seeing where they've been at the last couple of years, and besides all the easy schedule shit and this and that, they were a good team. Houston, like when people sit there and say, well, if Houston would have beaten New England, they would have definitely went on to win the Super Bowl. They were the better team. How come they didn't win the game? Oh, well, then people say, oh, well, it was C.J. Stroud was the reason they didn't win. You know what? C.J. Stroud played like shit because the Patriots defense played fantastic. He didn't go out there and decide that day, well, I'm going to throw 4 interceptions and see what the rest of the team can do. The Patriots defense put the pressure on him. C.J. Stroud was getting beat to death because their offensive line sucked. I was saying that all year about Houston, is Houston can't make a deep playoff run because their O-line stinks. Look at what happened to New England in the Super Bowl a few days ago. Their offensive line was in shambles. And guess what happened? They ended up getting smoked in that game because their O-line sucked. Drake Maye had no time to throw. And here's the thing, even when he had time to throw, there was nothing open. And that's where you just give credit to Mike McDonald, and that defense was like, they were just strapping up, dude. Like, they were just playing a hell of a game. And I thought the New England defense played really well. They got Milt Williams. They still have a ton of cap space, too. Now, they obviously have to re-sign Christian Gonzalez. Says he wants to be there. You can't let guys like that walk out of your building because he is a legitimate difference maker. They were 1-2 when Christian Gonzalez was hurt. I think they lost like 2 games the rest of the season when he came back. So, yeah, he is a absolute difference maker for that team. And anyone saying who next year New England's not going to be good, they were exposed. Dude, they have all their players are incredibly young. I think they're going to go out and trade for another receiver. They're going to be in the market for that. I legitimately think they're going to end Max Crosby. They need an edge rusher. And they need another. I think they do need another receiver. I like their running back room with Stevenson and Henderson. I think they could use another receiver, just a more explosive receiver. In terms of, I think Stephon Diggs is just getting a little old. I know he had a really good season this year, but I think he gets someone younger, more explosive. He's going to stay, but I think you could pair someone up better with that. But besides that, man, I think this team could seriously run it back next year. I think they're a really good team. I think Drake Maye, look, he had a really poor game. I think the lights were too bright for him in that game, but he's 23 years old. He's a year older than I am. So I think between I think it was just so overwhelming for him. And Josh McDaniels, I didn't think he called the greatest game plan for Drake Maye either. I thought they just were kind of going out to like, hey, we need to push the ball all the way down the field. But it's like, honestly, bro, you need to get the ball out quick because our offensive line can't stop a fucking slow breeze, more or less a Seattle pass rush. So it was tough. I think New England will be perfectly fine going forward. Drake Maye was an MVP candidate for a reason. I don't want to say, oh, this was your MVP, this and that, whatever. He's still, he's a great quarterback. It's just a big moment. And he didn't live up to it yet, but the whole team just felt overwhelmed. The offensive line felt overwhelmed. I thought Vrabel felt overwhelmed. I think Maye felt overwhelmed. I thought the defense played really good. But, yeah, going to this offseason, they're going to make a big splash move, I believe. I think they're going to be in the running for Crosby. So it'll be a big year coming up for them. And I think they're in great shape. They're one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So it's not like they're the Commanders a few years ago. They were weirdly one of the oldest teams in the NFL, and now they're like incredibly old and have to do like a full roster rebuild. It's weird. So, yeah. That's it for today's video, y'all. Hope you all enjoyed it, and per usual, y'all take it easy.